every Python project video because you get to see the results of the code. And here we've got an interactive chart of the Ethereum prices going back for the past year. Hey friends, welcome to the video. You've probably seen that at the moment there's a lot of movement in the cryptocurrency market. Bitcoin and Ethereum hitting all-time highs and decentralized finance starting to become really popular in the space. In some of my previous videos, I showed you how you can go about building your own virus in Python as well as cracking passwords. For academic purposes only, of course. But today we're going to do something slightly different. In today's beginner-friendly tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can build your own Candlestick chart that will show the prices for Ethereum for the past year. This really cool interactive chart is going to allow you to be able to step back in time to understand price activity for Ethereum. Not only are you going to learn a lot about candlesticks in the context of trading and investing, but you're also going to learn how you can reach out to the Coinbase API to grab historical financial data and then use the Plotly library in Python to put that onto a chart. I love projects like this because it allows you to get fun with Python and work on a real world application that you can use. Please, if you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button so I can continue to make more fun Python project videos like this. By the way, I'm giving away a free guide to learning Python, so if that's something that you want to get your hands on, check and click the link in the description below. With that said, buckle your seatbelts and let's get started. Right, so what I've done is I've just created a project and I've created a main.py file, and in here we're going to start off with the classic, well, I'll make it big actually. In here we're going to start off with the classic if name main check. Now if you've watched my previous Python project videos, you know that I like to start off with this because it tells Python exactly what function we want to run when we start the program, or what code we want to run. And in this case we're going to run the main function and then we'll leave it empty for now. Right, so now that we've got that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called Coinbase API product, I don't know, we'll just call it candlesticks URL, right? And as you can probably guess, we're going to be using the Coinbase API to get our data. Given that the text is quite large, I'm going to have to put this on a separate line. So in Python, you can do that using the backslash. And then in this case, I'm going to leave the string empty for now. And what we'll do is we'll quickly head over to the API. So essentially, the endpoint that we're going to hit is the Coinbase Pro API. And for the most part, it's free, which is quite cool. And what you can do is you can retrieve, they've got a bunch of endpoints, right? And here you can get back the candles. And by the way, I'm going to get onto candles in a second, but essentially you can get back candles for a given product. And the product that we're going to be looking at, of course, today is we're going to be looking at ETH USD. So that's the way to get it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this, copy that, and come back to my editor. And the base URL is https api.pro.coinbase.com, followed by the endpoint. So in this case, I'm going to just make this a bit smaller so you can see products, and then afterwards the product ID. So we're going to be actually passing that in when we as we write the code. And there's one more thing that we're going to do, and we're going to call we're going to have a parameter called granularity, right? And again, we're going to leave that for us to fill in later. And granularity essentially allows us to be able to specify the duration of the candle. So I've mentioned candles a few times, so it's now it's probably best to explain it. Right, so I'm on Investopedia, which is a great website to learn more about investing and trading. And here I've got an image of a candlestick. As you can tell in the middle, this is essentially what a candlestick looks like. What a candlestick does is it tells a story about the price of a stock and how it changes throughout the day. It'll tell you the highest price of that stock in the day. It'll also tell you what it opened at. So we know stock markets open and close. So it'll tell you, you know, when it was opened, when the stock market opened, what price was it? And when it closed, what price was it? And it's useful to be able to have all of this information. And I suppose a candlestick, it's really good in the sense that it gives you all of that visually without you having to, you know, look at a list or a spreadsheet of just raw numbers. Now this entire candlestick represents price activity for the day, but sometimes traders want to be able to see a more concentrated volume. So they might want to see price activity for the last hour, in which case the candlestick would represent price activity for that hour, right? Or you could have like 4 hours or 10 hours or 24 hours, or you can even have it by month. Now there's one other thing that you need to know with respect to candlesticks, and that is their color. A red candle basically indicates that a stock closed the market at a lower price. So say for example, when the market opened, the stock was $50. If it dropped to $48, the candle would be red, because if it drops to $48 and the market closed, that means it closed at a lower price than it started with. Taking the same example, say a stock opened at $50 and then rose up to about $55. So when the market closed, it finished at $55. And that basically means it closed at a higher price than it opened with. And in that case, you're going to get a green candle. To summarize, a candlestick gives a very good story about price activity for a given stock in a given time period. So as I mentioned, the candlesticks that we looked at earlier, this reflected price activity for the day. But of course, you can have candlesticks that go longer than a day, or you can have them be shorter than a day. And so that's enough about candlesticks. Let's get back to some code. Right, so we're going to start off by making a request to the Coinbase API, and we're going to do that using the request library. So I'm going to do request.get. I'm going to pass in the URL, or this variable here. And we left 2 blanks that we need to fill, right? So we're going to use the .format function in Python, and we're going to need to pass in 2 values here. The first thing that we're going to pass in is the cryptocurrency product. In other words, basically the thing that's trading at the moment that we want to get the candlestick data for. And for that, we're going to pass in ETH/USD. You're probably asking, why not just ETH? And the reason why is because when you buy Ethereum, you have to pay for it, right? And to pay for it, you have to pay with something. And the way you pay for it is either US dollars, or you can also pay for it in British pounds, or you can pay for it even with Bitcoin, right? There are different ways you can purchase Ethereum, and each of those have different price datas because they operate at different conversion rates. So because of that, you need to pass in the pair. So in this case, I'm going to pass ETH/USD. The second thing that we want to pass in is the granularity. And essentially, when I mentioned that candlesticks represent a given time period, and I mentioned that on that image that I showed earlier, it showed the candlesticks for price activity in the day. And so the granularity is basically that parameter. It's basically how long you want that time period to be for that candlestick. So we want it to be a day, right? So I'm actually I can put 1 here, but as you can imagine, this granularity doesn't expect the number of days. You actually have to give it in seconds. So the number of seconds in a given day are 86,400. And I actually know that off the top of my head because I've had to do this a lot of times before with other programs. So that's a fun fact there. Right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to report this in a response JSON object. Even though the response doesn't come back in JSON, this will still get the response back in a way that makes it easier for us to work with it. Now, the data that this API gives back, if we take a look, as you can tell, it's an array. So you get back an array, but in that array, you get more arrays. So it's an array of arrays, and each one of these sub-arrays is actually a candlestick, right? It actually has all the data related to building one candlestick. So it has basically the time, so that's just the date. And then it has the lowest price for that cryptocurrency. It has the highest price for that cryptocurrency. It has the opening price and the closing price and the volume, right? So each one of these subarrays has all of the different price features that we mentioned that constitute to building up a single candlestick. Now that we know that, it's all a matter of just putting the data in a format that we can work with. So essentially, I'm going to create a few empty arrays. So I'm going to create one called dates, and then I'll just duplicate that, and then we're going to have lows, highs, and these are just going to store the arrays of data that comes back. So basically, what we want is an array of all the dates. We want an array of all the low prices. We want an array of all the high prices. And that's just going to make it easier to work with when we build the chart, right? And by the way, you can all do this. You can do all of this in a one-liner, but it's not going to be a very readable one-liner in Python. And so one of the philosophies in Python is write readable code, or explicit is better than implicit. So sometimes you actually write more code, but it's more readable, and that's the most important thing. So when you write your Python programs, just keep that in mind. Make sure you focus on writing readable code. So now it's just a matter of iterating through all of the data that came back in response JSON. So I'm just going to call this for candlestick data in response JSON. I'll copy that there. What we want to do is we want to extract out all the data and then put that into the relevant arrays. So let's do that. So the first one is dates.append, and we're going to append to this. And what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to call the date time from timestamp function. And what this is going to do is you give it a timestamp. So if we go back to the documentation, you know that we're being given back a timestamp here. So we want to convert that into a more readable timestamp. So what we're going to do is we'll give that date time from timestamp, and then we'll give it the candlestick data, and it's at the first position, right? So we're going to go through every single one of these rows, and then we're going to extract out all the dates, and given that it's timestamps, we're going to convert that into a datetime object, and we're going to append it to dates. Now the rest of the values are less interesting. They don't need any other processing. It's just a matter of extracting it out. So we'll do lows.append followed by candlestick data, and we know that's at position 1. And I'm just going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to replace the lows, and that's going to be highs, and then this one's going to be opens, and then closes. And then what we'll do is we'll just change the numbers because these are all at the, put them in the correct position. Right, so now that our data is ready in the right format, now we need to build out the chart. And we're going to use a library called Plotly to do that. Plotly is a great Python library. I think they're also available in other languages too. But essentially it's a library that allows you to easily build charts. So as you can tell here, you've got bar charts, line charts, pie charts, and then you have all these other scientific charts. You've got plenty of charts, great library for that. And so we're going to actually make use of that library to build the chart to show the candlesticks. Right, so let's import the Plotly library. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to the top, and let me import the other libraries while we're here. So import requests, of course, and then we're going to import from Plotly, import graph objects. So that's the one we're going to be using. And then the other library that I want to import is the datetime library. So in datetime, import datetime. And we'll install these later on in the program. Cool, so let's go about building the chart, and this is where it gets quite fun. So we're going to create a variable called figure, and we're going to have graph objects. And the idea is graph objects has a function called figure, and it takes a few parameters. The two parameters that we're going to pass in that we care about are data and layout. Now layout you don't have to, but I just kind of want to show you a bit more about this library, and it's a good opportunity to do that. Of course you can explore this in your own time, but I'll just show you a bit more about that. So with data, what it does is it takes an array, and this array is basically going to be all the different graph objects that you want to construct, right? And luckily there is another function available on graph objects, and it's called candlesticks. And as you can guess, it makes it super easy to be able to create candlestick graph objects and pass them into this data series. And that's really handy, and that's the reason why I think Plotly is a fantastic library, because it has a lot of these out of the box, and it makes it very easy and quick to build out your chart. So with the candlestick function, what you pass in is basically what data you want across the x-axis, and in this case we want the dates, right? So we want to be able to see the dates across the x-axis. And then the other parameters, and by the way, of course, we have the dates array, and this is why it was useful to extract it out. And so the other parameters are going to be, as you can guess, open. So that's going to be all the opens. What I'll do actually is I'll just duplicate these, and then this is going to be the highs. And then we're going to have the lows. The parameters that they accept, by the way, are singular, but of course we're giving it an array of data. That's why it's plural. Well, that's what we're doing anyway. And so that looks good, really. So that's how you construct candlestick graph objects. You give it the series of data that looks like this. And so we're pretty much done for this data parameter. Let's look at the layout parameter. So the layout parameter, you don't actually have to provide it, but it does give you some functionality to edit the layout for the chart. And one of the things that it gives you is the ability to edit the title for the chart. And I think that's quite handy. So the way you construct a layout is you call graph objects, you pass in, or you call the layout function, and this accepts a bunch of attributes. All we care about is the title. And then what do we want to change about the title, right? So this takes a dictionary, and you can change the font family, you can change the weight of the font, but more importantly, you can change the text too, right? So I'm just going to change the text, and I'm going to say this is an ETH just USD daily chart. And again, there's a few other options for you to be able to change a font family or the font. And so feel free to Google and check out the API. Actually, I'll include a link in the description below if you want to see what options you have for constructing layouts. Right, and then to show the chart, all we have to do is call figure.show. Again, figure is the variable that's storing the graph figure object that we created. And now all we need to do is install the requirements, and then we can give it a run. Now I've created a requirements.txt file here, and it has two requirements. It has requests, which is the library to make the HTTP requests out to the Coinbase API. And the other one is of course plotly, which is going to plot the chart. I highly recommend that you create a requirements.txt file like this, specify the version. So that way, if you were to send this program to a friend or transfer it to a different computer, you have all the requirements that you need to get the project up and running. Equally, you can, if you don't want to do that, just type pip install requests and pip install plotly and just install them, and then you'll be good to go. Right, so one thing is I did make a small mistake here. When you call the URL, when you're passing in the product, it's not ETH/USD, it's ETH hyphen. So again, the trading pair needs to have a hyphen instead of a slash. It's funny, a single character like that will stop an entire program from working, and every program has done it. So other than that, the program looks good, so let's give it a run. Right, so I've got the project opened up in terminal, so all I do is type pip install -r requirements.txt, and that will install all the requirements for the project. And then Python main.py, and this is always my favorite part of the every Python project video, because you get to see the results of the code. And here we've got an interactive chart of the Ethereum prices going back for the past year, and here I can zoom in, I can see each candlestick and the price data. Now this is a daily candlestick chart, so if I hover over one of these candles, you can see the date, right? So October 12th, October 13th, and then what you can see is basically the opening price, the high price, the low price, the closing price, and all of that you get from the candle. And of course, what you can also do is you have this nifty slider at the bottom here that allows you to expand the time range. So I can show the past couple of months, but equally I can show the last 7 or so days. So if I move that towards the right, as you can tell, the time series is contracting at the bottom. So as you can see, the past 7 days. So that looks good. And then, or the historical price, I don't think it will give you the current week. I think it will give you everything before the previous week, is my understanding from the API, but that's still good. And then if I expand this back out for the past, it's grouped by month, and then you have the candlestick here, and then you have some options at the top here that allow you to adjust the settings. So you can download this plot as a PNG, and that's really handy because you can share this to a friend and say, hey, this is what Ethereum's doing. It's just going for an upwards trend, and you know, it's hit 1800 and it's probably going to hit 3 grand. This is not financial advice, but I'm just letting you know what the chart is showing. So you can download it as a PNG, you can maximize, you can select boxes on here, which is quite cool if you want to center on into specific parts of the charts. If you're explaining this to someone, maybe doing some sort of analysis, and then you have other options that are worth exploring in your own time. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're learning Python and you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell icon so you get notified as soon as I release the next video tutorial. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.